Hello, welcome to another Genshin Impact video. My name is Blossoms, and today we've got another build guide for you guys, this one covering Ninguang. Now, with the recent additions of the Husk of Opulent Dreams, as well as Goro, a lot of people have been talking about having full Geo comps and what characters to use, and a lot of people have been forgetting about Ninguang. While she isn't a Geo character that scales off of defense, which is highly beneficial for some of the stuff that we've been seeing recently for Geo, she is still a fantastic option for any Geo team, and we'll be going over that and more in this video, as well as just giving an updated guide for her in general. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, Ninguang is a 4-star Geo Catalyst user who runs in either main DPS role or sub DPS role. Now, personally, I like her in the sub DPS category because she is a little clunky. Her normal attacks just have this weird pause to them, and you can make them a little bit faster, and her charge attack has a little bit of a weird pause to her, and that can be a little annoying for a lot of people. And I do find it annoying sometimes. I do enjoy using her as a main DPS from time to time, but I mostly put her in the sub DPS role. And she also exceeds in the sub DPS role because her E skill, the Jade Screen, actually does really solid damage, and it does like a nice AoE, as well as protects the team and buffs Geo damage depending on who goes through it. It's a really solid ability, especially once you get some of her constellations, which we'll also go over. She also has this elemental burst. When you use it, it just creates a bunch of Geo shards, and they all home in on the target, and they deal some really solid damage, good Geo damage, and you get more shards if the Jade Screen's present on the field whenever you use it. It's a pretty solid kit, pretty simple. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit with the E and Q there because they are some of the biggest parts, but her normal attacks work where when you do her normal attack, they deal damage, and it gets her a Star Jade, and these Star Jades can stack up, and then you can release them with a charge attack where they home in on an enemy, they deal really solid damage, they scale off of her normal and charge attack, it seems like. So that's also something you're going to want to note. So even if you don't want a normal and charge attack that much, you're still going to want to level up her normal and charge attack just because the Star Jades do scale off of this. So that is something to make note of. She also has the passive here when Ninguang is in possession of Star Jades. Her charge attack does not consume stamina, so that is pretty nice. So you can always make sure that you're getting off of her charge attack. Even if it is a little clunky, you can at least make sure you're getting it off because you're not costing stamina. And then this is the thing I was talking about earlier, the Jade Screen. When you walk through it, when a character walks through it, it will gain them 12% Geo damage bonus for 10 seconds. I do believe it needs to be the character that walks through it. So like if Ninguang walks through it, Albedo in the party isn't going to get that same buff. You'd have to have Albedo walk back through it. So that's important to note. But otherwise, this is a very simple kit, very cool, and it gets a lot better with some of her constellations, but you can still use her as main DPS or sub DPS regardless or not. Now, what is the main benefit to using Ninguang? Why do you care? And when everybody's talking about all these Geo comps, and defense is a big buffing portion of these Geo comps, why do you care about Ninguang? Well, the thing is, first of all, she does really solid damage, especially as a sub DPS. She has a low cost burst of 40 with a low cooldown of 12 seconds, and it does really solid damage. Not to mention her E skill, even though it has a cooldown of 12 seconds, you can get it back up if you have some constellations, but it's still really solid. Busts the team's Geo damage, does plenty of damage itself, protects the team a little bit, and generates really good energy. And that is a big part to Ninguang, is that this E skill, especially with one of her constellations, generates really solid energy. So a lot of these Geo characters are going to want somebody providing them with solid Geo energy, and Ninguang is actually going to be an excellent option with, for that. Geo MC is also a really good option, but Ninguang does fill this role really well because she's also, a battery 1 and 2 DPS option that just does some solid damage. So overall, Ninguang's a pretty solid main DPS and sub DPS. We're going to be building her as a sub DPS here, but this build still works for her main DPS as well. We are going to be talking about different artifacts to consider for the future with the upcoming Geo characters. Things you might want to think of and builds you might want to try with different team comps as well. But before we get into all of that, let's go ahead and just talk about her constellations real quick. She has some really solid constellations. Her C1 is a nice quality of life where normal attacks deal some AoE. That is actually very nice, but the biggest constellation for Ninguang, in my opinion, is the C2. This is unbelievably underrated and valuable. Basically, the way it works is when Jade Screen is shattered, its cooldown will reset, and this can occur every 6 seconds. And the coolest thing about this is that if you place her E skill and then you use her elemental burst, this is actually going to count as shattering the Jade screen. So you're going to get it off of, off of its cooldown immediately. You're going to have it back and you can cast it again if you want to, which is actually really, really sick. It generates a ton of energy because of this, because you get 2 free E-skills and they generate some solid particles, not to mention you're also just dealing a bunch of damage. And then, you could have your next Geo character walk through for some Geo bonus damage. Really, really nice. Of course, the level ups are really nice. The C4 really doesn't matter. It just increases your elemental resistance, which is nice, but definitely not that amazing. Sorry, I dropped my pen. For some reason, I'm talking with a pen during this recording. But anyway, her C5 also just levels up, which is pretty nice as well. But the C6 is also extremely valuable. Her C2 and C6 are the most important aspects to Ninguang. C2 is huge for the energy generation, helps with damage as well, because as I said, that gate does some solid damage. But the C6 here definitely helps a ton. If you gain 7 Star Jades whenever you use her Star Shatter, which is her Elemental Burst, which means you can release those with a charge attack and deal a ton of damage on top of her Elemental Burst as well. It's really, really strong. Even if you don't like normal or charge attacking with Ninguang, you should always charge attack after your Elemental Burst because it is going to be giving you some of those Star Jades. All right, we talked about her kit, we talked about how she works, her role for some of these Geo teams, as well as just teams in general, and she's a solid character, but what artifact sets do you want to use on her? Well, one of the most traditional sets is going to be a split set. It's going to be the Archaic Petra and the Noblesse Oblige. This is a fantastic option for her damage. As a main DPS or sub DPS, is going to be a fantastic option. Of course, you can also use things like 2-piece Gladiator and the 2-piece Archaic Petra. Those are going to be rock solid options as well. But one thing to consider for the full Geo teams, or maybe 3 Geo teams and like an elemental character, is going to be the 4-piece Archaic Petra. This is likely going to be something we're going to be using on Goro because he automatically picks up a crystallized shard. However, if you do have the pieces and you want them on your Ninguang, she's not going to be a bad option as well. Maybe you're going to be buffing that one elemental character on your team for your Geo comp, so this is something you're going to want to consider. Now, a lot of people might be asking, well, why not 4-piece Wanderer's Troop? And a lot of her damage comes from the Star Jades. However, they don't count as charge attack damage, so that is something you're going to want to think about. And the Elemental Mastery is lost on her. It just really doesn't matter. So you're only getting the 35% increase to your actual charge attack, not the Star Jades. So that's rather unfortunate. You could use something like the Emblem of Severed Fate, but you really don't need to. She is a 40 cost with a low cooldown. You really don't need that much energy recharge on her. If you have just a little bit on your substats, you'll be a-okay. And even if you don't, if you ever C2, you'll have it off a cooldown, no problem. So this I can't really recommend, especially since it doesn't help her Star Jade damage. It just counts her Elemental Burst damage, so that's really not going to help that much. You could use something like Shimenawa's Reminiscence as well, but then again, still not buffing that Star Jade damage, but you are not losing too much because you are getting that 18% attack, and you are just, getting that increase for your normal and charge attack. So if you do like to normal and charge attack with her, this is going to be a solid option, and the 15 energy isn't really that big a deal considering she can generate so much, especially if you ever see C2. The Husk of Opulent Dreams isn't really going to work on her. This can help, I guess. If you want her to be tankier with a crystallized shield, then the defense will be kind of nice, and you will get some extra Geo bonus damage, but it's just not going to be as good as going like 2-piece Archaic Petra and 2-piece Noblesse Oblige. This is overall just going to be the best set and easiest to use, and is going to buff all of her damage the most. All right, so enough about sets. What about the main sets? Of course, you're going to want to go for the typical DPS layout. She doesn't scale off anything special, so you're going to want to go attack percent, Geo damage bonus, and then crit rate or crit damage, whatever is going to be the best to give you the best ratio possible. For the substats, you are going to want to be looking for crit rating, crit damage, and attack percent a lot as well, because she is a Catalyst user. Her attack isn't that large, so attack percent is going to be pretty valuable. Energy recharge, as I said, is going to be pretty good as well. If you have C2, you don't really need to worry about it nearly as much. I would focus mainly on crit rate, crit damage, and then attack percent and energy recharge is kind of like the nice cherry on top. As for the stats on all my artifacts, I'll go over each one so you know what I'm using for this video, and then we'll move on to the weapons. All right, it's time to talk about weapons, and likewise to the artifacts, Not much has really changed here. Ninguang hasn't really received any buffs this patch. She's always been pretty solid, but now having multiple Geo characters on the same team, like 3 or more, is in the talks because of certain characters' kits. This makes her a lot more viable, especially with the energy regeneration. And her weapons here are going to mainly be the same. Solar Pearl is going to be one of the best 4-star options, if not the best 4-star option. It gives you crit rate, it increases your elemental burst damage and your normal attack damage. It is a really solid option for her. Of course, you can use things like the Widsith if you really want to. 2 out of the 3 are beneficial to you. You get some extra attack, you get some elemental damage, but if you get elemental mastery, it's really not going to be helping you out that much. But if you need the crit damage, it's going to be a good option. Things like Eye of Perception aren't too bad either. If you're entirely free to play, Mappa Mare is going to be an okay option. Elemental Mastery substat hurts a lot, but you do get the elemental damage increase, which isn't so bad. Dodoko Tails, if you have this from the 1.6 event, this is going to be a really fantastic option for her as a free to play as well. But for the most part, best 4-star is going to be Solar Pearl or Widsith. If you have any 5-star catalysts other than like Moonglow or something, those are also going to be better than any of the 4 stars here. All right, and before we move on to team comps for Ninguang, we're also going to be talking about some of those full Geo comps I was talking about. I'll go over the attributes on my Ninguang. I only have her at level 70 out of 80 here, and I have her at 1400 attack, 93 elemental mastery for some reason, somehow got there, but we have 61.6% crit rate, 186% crit damage, only 118 energy recharge because you really don't need that much on her, and then of course I have the 79.6% geo damage bonus there. So this is a pretty solid build, especially the crit rate there. I'm pretty proud of that one. Pretty solid, not exactly the 1 to 2, but very good otherwise. All right, as for team comps for Ninguang, she is going to work with any of your Geo homies. Zhongli, Albedo, Noelle's a really solid option. You can battery Noelle very well with her. That was a lot of wells. But she works with a lot of the Geo characters, and when Goro comes up, she's going to be working pretty well with him. I think a Ninguang team with the Goro and like Albedo or like Zhongli, or maybe like Ito, Goro, and Ninguang, and then like an elemental character, I think those are going to be really solid options, especially if you're running like the full Archaic Petra on Ninguang or Goro. I think that'll be pretty sweet with like Arataki Ito, and then you could have like your elemental character be like Shing Shou here, so you're buffing his hydro damage, and then Arataki Ito's, going on the field with his like combo attacks. There is a lot of potential with the Geo comps. Her main role for those Geo comps is going to be battery. She pairs well with characters like Albedo and Zhongli because she can battery them very well. So really, she's going to work well for most of them because a lot of the energy generation for Geo characters is pseudo-random. Albedo is pretty good at generating. Zhongli is pretty RNG on his generating. Noelle doesn't generate anything at all, and GeoMC is the only one who I could call a decent Geo battery otherwise. So Ninguang is not only going to be filling a battery role for the team, but she's also going to be filling a sub DPS role, as well as protection and buffing the Geo damage for your other characters. I would at minimum recommend your Ninguang to be in a dual Geo comp, because she really does excel with the resonance here, getting that increased shield strength, and she's going to be picking up a lot of crystallized shields because she generates them with her auto attacks. Her damage dealt is increased by 15% while protected by a shield, and her the Geo res is shredded by 20%. It's a phenomenal resonance for any Geo character, but especially for Ninguang. She's not only being a strong battery, but a strong sub DPS for your team. With that said, maybe a lot of you aren't building a full Geo team and you just want to know what other characters pair well with Ninguang. Well, of course, as I said, I think you're almost always going to want to be in a dual Geo resonance with Ninguang. It benefits her so much. But if you want to do some crazy one-shot shenanigans, Bennett's going to be a really good option because her burst is, of course, going to deal some more damage. And then although her C1 allows her to deal some AoE, she doesn't have that much crowd control available to her. So characters like Beto are going to help out a lot, especially since you're kind of limited by your elements, since you can't do a lot of Animo with Geo because they don't really interact at all. So having like Sucrose or Kazuha on the team kind of sucks because you're almost always going to be doing a dual resonance, and then if you have an Animo character, then you only leave yourself for one element and you're not really getting that much of a benefit. So other characters that do really strong AoE like Beto or even like Ganyu or something with her Q are going to be pretty good options. Also, characters that can attack with you like a C6 Fischl or something, or Xing Shou are going to be really good options as well. for the most part, you'll just want to avoid some of those animo characters and go for the elemental characters for the most part. And then also, as I said, she feels best to me in a sub DPS role. So she fits fantastically in teams where you just have like a hyper carry main DPS, and then you have them going off of like, their sub DPS, like Raiden and Eula are really good examples where like you could just have Ninguang pop on the field, do her E skill, do her elemental burst, deal a ton of damage, and refresh Albedo or something, buff him with her screen, and then you just go back to doing what you were normally doing with Eula and Raiden Shogun and whatnot. Those are going to be really good options as well. So just having her and Albedo as like a package, or her and Zhongli as like a package on a team, really helps out a ton, especially if you're running like a hyper carry that loves to be on the field a ton and needs some of that protection from crystallized shields and just some extra damage. All right, enough talk. Time to do some showcasing. Of course, we're going to be bullying the Pyro Registine as usual. Just kind of show off some of her damage, what she's capable of, and show you guys some of her burst DPS potential and a kind of typical team that she might be in. All right, let's go ahead and get Bennett going. Zhongli, and we got to place her thing over here so we can walk through it and then take full advantage of it. And you see she does pretty solid damage, and don't forget the charge attack at the end, and that's going to help you out a ton as well. You saw we did like 21k there, and we could just finish it off with an E skill very easily there. Our E skill does plenty of damage. It has no problem doing that, and you can see she can be a fantastic sub DPS option because we weren't using her as a main DPS there. I was just kind of taking my time with using her stuff there. So you could literally just drop her Q, do a charge attack real quick, and then swap back to doing whatever you're doing with other characters. And that is one of the craziest things about her. She does so much damage in such a short amount of time and can help, with the damage on your other teammates. All right, that's going to be it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope it helped you guys build your Ningguangs, and to maybe consider using her whenever you're thinking about building a full Geo team, because we are seeming to get some characters that want us to build a full Geo team, and I wanted to remind you guys not to forget about her. She's an excellent battery and sub DPS, and I really like her a lot. Despite some of her clunky issues, she's still a phenomenal sub DPS, and she does have some of the best aesthetics in the game, in my opinion. But other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. My name is Blossoms, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.